Ondi Timoner. Just want to make sure I'm pronouncing your last name right.
That is right.
Right. So how did you start in the filmmaking industry?
So I didn't really consciously decide to become a filmmaker. I just sort of picked up a camera. I was a junior in college and I was curious to ask people questions. And I started to realize that holding a camera, they gave me really interesting answers. And so my brother and my roommate and I were driving across the country from we went to college at the time at Yale, and we were driving to the West Coast and then back over spring break. And I brought a little camera along, and we went into convenience stores along the way to buy a soda or a bag of chips or so. And I would ask people, what they feared the most, or what made them happy, or what they thought of gays in the military, because that was actually an issue at the time in 1992 when this was. And I swear people just gave such interesting answers, and all these conversations started happening. And I realized that the camera was sort of a bridge, into people's hearts and minds. And by my senior year at Yale, I would only take classes where the teacher or professor would let me make a film instead of write a paper, because I learned so much more that way. And I took this one class called Transgressive Women in American Culture, and went into women's prisons to ask them about their experience. And when I would drive out with the tapes and the camera in the back of the car, I felt like I was freeing some part of them from inside the prison walls. Like I had so many of my own prejudices and preconceived notions sort of dissolve in those rooms. And I realized the power of filmmaking, not only to really upend anything you think and give you a much more nuanced, truthful and authentic experience, but also to communicate that, right? Like these people were trapped inside prison, and we had one portrayal of them on late night television as like these crazy, violent women. And I was meeting a whole different type of woman, usually someone who was driving the getaway car, usually involved in a nonviolent crime, a mother, a daughter, someone's sister. And so by driving out with the tapes, it was like alchemy. It was like freeing their souls and their stories, to be outside of a otherwise invisible parallel universe that we fund with our tax-paying dollars. So that was it. I mean, that was like 30 years ago, and I haven't looked back since, to be honest. And back then there was no career, there was no industry in documentary filmmaking. I, in fact, applied to NYU and UCLA film schools coming out of Yale, cum laude. I was cum laude at Yale, and I won the film prize at Yale. I even won like the first ever prize for film that Yale had ever given out. They had no production facilities back then. All I could do is make my films at a public access station. But anyway, I wanted to be a documentary filmmaker. And so I applied saying that to these film schools, and I was rejected by the film schools. I couldn't get in. So now when I speak at those film schools, they often ask me, what do you think of film school? And I think, I don't really know, because I didn't go to film school, but I do think that not being in film school allowed me to develop my own original style, which I think you can kind of see in all my films a little bit.
Okay. Okay. And what made you want to, because I saw the movie, it was great. What made you want to make a documentary like Last Flight Home that was so obviously very personal to you?
That one, was more of an unconscious, again, effort. I mean, sometimes I go and set out to make these films, and sometimes these films almost set out for me to make them, and it's the other way around. This one, like Dig and We Live in Public, all of them, all three of those, they were just kind of bigger than I was. They're just kind of, it was almost like the film was meant to be made, and I kind of came along and made it. In this case, my father was dying, and I didn't expect it, even though I should, because he was 92. But we don't talk about death and dying in our society very much, and And so I was just kind of in this denial about it. And when he said, I really need to go, I panicked, and I just didn't want to forget another word he said. When we found out that there was medical aid in dying in California and that he had the right to die, I was happy to be able to help him, move on to perhaps a better place, but at least to be free of his body, which had been trapped in. He'd been paralyzed for 40 years. So I was happy that there was a solution to him lying there for years, or who knows how long, with his terminal illness until it killed him. As soon as he could make that choice, he had like such power and agency. It was like wind returned to his sails, and he was empowered again to be funny and present and happy, because he knew that on this certain day, March 3rd, 2021, he could take his life, and that we were going to support him in that. And so that's changed the course of my life. But at that moment, I was just a daughter sort of panicking. He was like my favorite person in the world. And I just didn't want to forget anything that he said, because I can't really remember him from before I was 10, when he had that accidental stroke that paralyzed him. My brain kind of blocks it out, I think. So I think it was really a very deep urge I had not to forget him. And I went to a therapist and I asked her, if this was appropriate. And I said, my dad's terminally ill. He's coming home from the hospital. He's going to start a 15-day waiting period in hospice. And I feel like I need to set up cameras. And I thought she'd say that it was terribly inappropriate. But instead, she's like, if you think you should film, you should film. So I called my father, and he, to my surprise, said, I instinctively know you're on the right track. And then he never let the cameras be turned off the whole time. I mean, he knew what I was doing more than I knew what I was doing. But at some point along those lines, I came to realize that this was the most profound and important and greatest learning experience of my life, and that it was incumbent upon me to share it. And that if I didn't share it, I wasn't honoring the work that I've been doing for 30 years, which is, to go out with a camera and learn, and then come back and edit together what I've learned, to then share it with an audience. And that's what I needed to do with this. And getting my sister and family on board for that was more challenging, because nobody expected that we were making a documentary. They all kind of believed me that I was just filming him, because that's what I thought. But I did film it like a documentary, because I'm a documentary filmmaker. So luckily I got good sound, and, I had 4 cameras going. And when I realized, oh my God, this is a film, by then, I had the material. I had 500 hours of footage to share. So I guess the movie is 104 minutes. So from 500 hours, which is not a crazy ratio. If you look at my other films, some of my films are like thousands of hours of footage down to a feature. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
But who are some of your greatest inspirations when you're doing documentary filmmaking?
Well, all the great verite filmmakers of the 60s are probably my favorites, just because great observational filmmaking, verite filmmaking, is the most powerful, I think, form of filmmaking, period, if it can be done right. Because what it does is it takes the audience and invites them into the room without any mediation or narration, to really observe what's going on there, and that's a hard thing to do, especially these days, with the amount of consciousness we have around cameras and social media. And, everybody is just constantly thinking about what they can post, and so it's not the same as even when I began. People were a lot more innocent about cameras, but now it's a different story. But I think to this day, the D.A. Pennybakers, the Robert Drew, I won the Robert and Ann Drew award for excellence in observational filmmaking in November from Doc NYC, and I was blown away. I was so honored because, their films, these are the first films I ever saw, documentaries I ever saw were, Primary, his film Primary, that was amazing, or Ricky Leacock's films, D.A. Pennebaker's films, Don't Look Back, about Bob Dylan. That is a great, great film. And so, I think my most powerful films actually have a good deal of verite in them. I mean, Last Flight Home is almost all purely verite, a few little interviews, but basically you're in the room, and that's what people say, is that they can actually transpose their own families onto our family. And it's such a powerful experience to like just be invited to be at my father's bedside and to be part of the Timoner family, And I think Dig does that. It takes you into the lives of these two bands, or We Live in Public takes you into the bunker, into, to be in that place for 30 days with these people who have given up all of their rights just to be where it matters at the turn of the millennium, and have subjected themselves to this social experiment. And you're kind of in there, right in there. And a lot of my films do that. So yeah, I'd say those are the most, if I hadn't seen it, I don't know if I would have known to do it. I don't really look at other films to influence my work. I look at the subject of the work. So if I'm making a film about someone, the style of the film will come from that, or from that experience. It won't come from other films that I'm studying, I have a much more like pure relationship with my subject, and that's how I make my films. So, but these verite films early on, without them, I don't know where I'd be. So,
Right. Okay. So I know that you're working on a project about the disruption of finance, as according to your Wikipedia page.
oh, it should be updated because that film is premiered at South by Southwest in March. It's called The New Americans, and it's coming out, I believe, in the fall or winter, or right at New Year's, somewhere around then. And I'm not able to disclose who's putting it out yet, but
Oh, okay.
it's playing the festival circuit. It played Mountain Film just recently, Dallas, Milwaukee. Next stop that I'm making with the film is Sidewalk Film Festival in Birmingham, Alabama. Fantastic festival. I cannot recommend it more highly. Fantastic festival. If you can go, Richard, you should. And
Where's
then
that?
it's in Birmingham, Alabama. It's a great regional festival. Like I have 3 films that are playing this year because it's the 25th anniversary, and they're huge fans of Dig. So they're playing Dig. They're playing Last Flight Home because that's where I did the secret screening to test it when it was a very, very rough cut years ago, before Sundance premiere, before the Telluride premiere. I did a secret screening for 100 people there under no title, without my name, to see whether it was too personal or whether it was appropriate to share. And so I'm bringing the final version back, and then also The New Americans is playing there, and also Woodstock Film Festival in New York it's playing. So those are the next places it's playing. But it's a crazy film. I mean, it's all about memes and the internet. And if you've seen my movie We Live in Public, it's sort of the part 2 of that. It's really looking at technology's impact on our minds, on our society, on our politics, on our finances, and the way that we're organizing. And it's both really positive and really negative, because the internet, like all of the most powerful things, is a double-edged sword. It's equally the greatest invention of our lifetime, and also what might bring us down. So, or I should say, virtual technology, including AI.
Right. Mm. That's true. So what do you enjoy most about your work, and what do you enjoy least about it?
That's a good question. I like that. My favorite aspect is how much I learn from the people and the subjects I delve into. It's almost like my camera's a diving bell, and it just takes me so deep into whatever the topic is, usually way far beneath the headlines, to a much more three-dimensional, four-dimensional, eight-dimensional truth, almost like a prism. And I really like to take the audience on that journey and share what I've learned with them. But I think my favorite part is making the film. I was last week, I was in a hospice, the only hospice for the homeless in America. And I'm making a film there. That's what it should say on my Wikipedia page. If my wiki was updated, feel free to update it, Richard, because I know you have special skills. The movie's called The In Between, in all caps, and it's named after a place called The In Between, INN Between. It's a place where the homeless can go to either recover from surgery, where they would normally be infected or unable to continue living on the streets, or they go there to die in a dignified manner with a loving face and not alone and in a bed. And every major city in America should have one of these. And I've just learned so much from the compassion, the care, the treatment, the people, the residents. I filmed a veteran dying last week, in this place. And I was rocked for days by it, but I just learned a lot on a deep level, not the kind of stuff you can get from a book, So,
Okay.
so that's what I love the most. Oh yeah. And what do I don't like? What do I not like the most?
The least.
It's so hard. It is so hard being a documentary filmmaker. There's an article right now as we speak about how there's a crisis in the documentary filmmaking world because the things that we film take such a psychological toll, and we have to be really, really have the fortitude mentally, or the health, the stability to really handle a lot of what it is that we're documenting. It's very, very intense stuff. So there's that aspect to it. And I think the article's in the Hollywood Reporter. Let's see. Let me tell you the name of the article. It is, give me 1 second. It is.
Yep, take your time.
The documentary film industry is in crisis, the unspoken traumas of the filmmaking community. I believe it's in the Hollywood Reporter. If you want to see it. But anyway, there's that. And then there's just the hours, the competition, the competition for, and I mean, I'm not competitive. I'm like off right now to go host a screening of colleagues of mine work that's coming out on HBO, Taylor Mack's 24-hour decade of popular music, because I think the film's so great. And I host all the nonfiction films at the Directors Guild of America. And I used to have a talk show that you can see on the internet if you're interested in documentary film, called BYOD, Bring Your Own Doc, in which I interview a different colleague every week for hundreds of episodes from 2011 to 2016. I did this. So I'm really a person who loves to kind of spread the word about my fellow filmmakers' work, and I love the community that we have. But it is really a competitive field now, and there's a lot of fear and competition for awards, and it's all built around awards, and it's all very exhausting, I guess is the word. Really, what I want to do is just make my movies, if that makes sense.
Right.
So, right. Yeah. The industry is what I don't like that much. But I work my way. I manage, I'm not complaining. I get to do pretty much whatever I want to do, but that's just because I just go do it. Usually I just go make my movies. I find funding along the way. Sometimes I take a job, but mostly I just go and make my own films. And then I sell them, or I get funding along the way. So I'm not one of these people who's always like looking for a job per se. That's just how I've always worked. I don't mind I mean, please call me and hire me for a job, but I'm not going to wait for the phone to ring to go make a movie, if that makes sense.
Right.
Like I have a
Absolutely.
couple movies going right now, and then I have a script about my father and that whole experience that I'm trying to make into a scripted film, because I do those as well. So
Right. Okay.
I would recommend Maplethorpe, the director's cut on Amazon, if you want to
Ma-
see a scripted film of mine.
Maplethorpe. Okay,
Mhm.
yeah, I'll check that out. I'll definitely check that out.
If it's
Also,
not in my wiki, then that's a problem. Let me know.
uh,
Sounds like my wiki needs a lot of updating, so I'm going to put that on a list of things for my team to take care of.
okay, and also you said earlier that you filmed a veteran dying.
I did just now, just last week.
Did he have to sign a release for that or?
Yeah,
Oh,
yep. He agreed to have that done. Yeah. This place is incredible. This place called the In Between, and my hope that once the film is made, there'll be a hospice for the homeless in every community in America. So at least every major city. So that's kind of my goal for that one. Just like Last Flight Home really put me on this journey of looking at the underserved, um, terminally ill people, and imagine being terminally ill and homeless. It's
right.
just unconscionable, and a society is only as good as we treat the least fortunate members of our society. So I'm interested in trying to help them survive, and also for the model to be replicated. And I think film is a powerful tool to do that with.
So, where do you think your career is going to go in the next 5 to 10 years?
Uh, it's a great question. I really never think like that. I never got into this thinking, oh, I'm going to do this one day, or I'm going to win this, or, I just was filming, and then I looked at this. I had like hundreds of tapes when I was making Dig, and my then boyfriend said to me, what do you do? What do you want to do with your career? And I was like, well, you see all those tapes? I just want to put them on one tape. So my thing is always just like doing whatever the project is that I'm doing, and then it leads to the next thing, just organically. I don't know. I hope I will make Last Flight Home, the scripted version, which was called A Stroke of Genius. And I would really, really love to tell that story, because though Last Flight Home, you see a little bit of my dad's career, you don't really get to go into what it is to start an airline, in the 70s, and the great rise and fall that happened there with the stroke and the impact it had on our family and all of that. And so I've written a script over the last 8 years. In fact, those are the pages you see on his bed. And that would be my dream, is to make that film. But in the meantime, I have a film about my sister, and this project she's doing in Brooklyn. And I have this film, The In Between, that I'm going to make. And I also have a film about AI that I've been making for a few years that I hope to finish, called Soulmate. So I have plenty of films to keep me very busy. But what do I expect? I expect more, that I'll make more films, and probably, hopefully, balance it out with living a little bit more too. Because I mean, doubling up on Last Flight Home and The New Americans at the same time was exhausting. And so I'm due for a little bit of balancing right now, taking things a little bit more, one at a time, if I can.
Okay. And last question, do you have any advice for young upcoming filmmakers like myself?
Go do it. Go make your film. Find something that you find interesting, that you think others will find important or relevant, even years from now, and something that you find interesting enough that you want to spend a couple of years focusing on it. And with documentary, you can go do it. Make sure you have good sound. You can always replace the visuals, but you cannot capture the sound again if it's live and happening in front of you. So make sure you have a good microphone, and go make a film. Like if that's what you want to do, no one's going to just it's like, it wasn't like I could show up in Hollywood with a sign and say I wanted to be a filmmaker and somebody would give me a job. I just went and made movies, and that's how I got to be successful, and to be where I've now made 10 features and hundreds of shorts. I just went and made them. Sometimes I needed funding, a lot of funding, and then I would go and find that. But first, before you find it, you've got to prove it, so go shoot something and make a sizzle, and then you could find funding. But if you sit around and you write it again, rewrite a proposal on your computer in your bedroom, nobody's going to give you the funding. So get out there and do it.
Well, that's good advice.
And learn to edit what you do so that you know what you need to shoot. No better guide than being an editor to know what to do in the field. Because you'll sit there and you'll edit and you'll be like, oh my God, I'm missing this, and this. And the next time you go out there, you'll actually capture those things. So learn to edit. I edit a lot of my own films, usually co-edit with someone else, just because it's very, very hard, long work. But I love it. The art of documentary is a lot in the editing room. I usually joke, editing is 70%, but shooting is also 70%. So if you want to be a documentary filmmaker, you need to be ready to give 140%.